All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into speaking English like a native speaker.
Okay.
We're looking at a podcast called Speak English Like a Native.
Mm-hmm.
And, the goal here is to look at all those little things that can help us sound a little more natural.
Yeah, those things that native speakers do without even thinking.
Exactly. And I think all of us who've, learned English as a second language,
Right.
we know that, you can learn all the grammar rules and you can sound pretty good.
Yeah.
But there's just something that sounds different.
Yeah, it's like a little too formal.
A little too formal, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not until you really start to listen to how people are speaking naturally
Right.
that you can start to pick up those differences.
Yeah, like contractions and linking.
Contractions and linking. That's a great point.
That's what this podcast talks about.
So what does that mean?
So for example, instead of saying I am going to the store,
Right.
you would say, I'm going to go to the store. Or even, I'm going to the store.
Oh, yeah.
Like shortening it and linking it.
And it's not even just about speed, is it?
No, not at all.
It's also just about how natural it sounds.
Exactly.
Like you're not thinking too hard about it.
Like you're comfortable with the language.
Right, right.
And it's not grammatically incorrect or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way that native speakers speak.
It's just how it works.
Yeah, in casual conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some other examples of that?
So instead of want to, it's wanna.
Right.
Or even did you eat becomes did you eat.
Oh, wow.
So it's all these little things that, you might not learn in a textbook.
Right.
But that native speakers just do automatically.
That's what I love about these deep dives.
Yeah.
Is that you start to see those patterns and you're like, oh, that's how it works.
You start to notice it everywhere.
Yeah. And then once you can start to use those things yourself,
Mm-hmm.
it makes you sound so much more
Comfortable.
confident, like you belong.
Yeah, you sound like you know what you're doing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about idioms and phrasal verbs
Okay.
because those are always a bit tricky, I think, for people learning English.
Yeah, they can be. They can be tricky.
But they also add so much personality to the language.
Yeah, definitely.
Like one example that they gave in the podcast was under the weather,
Yeah.
which literally, if you think about it, it makes no sense. But
you have to know the meaning.
But if you know that it means feeling sick,
Yes.
then it's like, oh, okay, I get it.
That's like a little puzzle.
It's like the secret code you have to unlock.
Exactly.
And I also think that idioms are really interesting because they often reflect
Oh, yeah.
the culture
The culture.
and the values of the place where they come from.
Yeah. For example, under the weather
Mm-hmm.
could come from the idea that bad weather can make you feel bad.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a connection there.
No, phrasal verbs are another thing that I think can be a little bit intimidating. Can you explain a little bit about those?
Yeah, so a phrasal verb is like a verb combined with a preposition.
Okay.
Like pick up, for example.
Right.
Pick up.
So pick up obviously can mean to physically pick something up.
Right.
But
it can have other meanings.
they can have all these other meanings.
Depending on the context.
Yeah, you can pick up a new skill.
You can pick up some groceries.
Or you can pick up on someone's bad mood.
Exactly.
So it's the same two words.
Yeah.
But they mean all these different things.
And that's just one example.
Wow.
There's so many phrasal verbs in English.
Yeah.
And once you start to understand them,
Yeah.
you can really unlock a whole new level of fluency.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like mastering those is the secret handshake to speaking English like a native.
It's like you're in the club.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're everywhere. You hear them all the time.
And once you start to recognize them,
Mm-hmm.
then you can start to use them.
And then all of a sudden you sound
More natural.
way more natural.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm starting to see this bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's not just about,
vocabulary.
yeah, not just memorizing vocabulary.
Mhm.
It's about understanding
How it all works together.
how it all works together in real speech.
Exactly.
And I'm excited to keep going with this
Yeah.
because I can already see how it can really help
Yeah.
with sounding less like a textbook
More natural.
and more like myself, but, in English.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Cool. It's interesting, isn't it?
What is?
This whole approach to learning English.
Yeah.
It really focuses on observation.
Oh, so it's not just about practicing what you've learned.
No, it's more about
It's about
paying attention
paying attention
to how native speakers are actually using
how people are actually speaking.
the language. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like being a detective almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like a language detective.
I love that, a language detective.
Yeah.
So you're looking for those clues.
Little clues.
Yeah, to figure out how to sound more natural.
Yeah, and the more you kind of immerse yourself in real English,
Right.
the more you'll start to pick up on those patterns.
Okay, but I have to admit, sometimes it does feel a bit overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's just so much to remember.
I know.
And sometimes I'm like, will I ever actually
Sounding a native speaker.
sound like a native speaker?
Yeah.
But, the podcast had a good point about, like, focusing on small steps. So it's not about trying to, like, learn everything all at once.
No.
It's about breaking it down.
Give into smaller chunks.
Just smaller chunks.
Yeah.
And celebrating those little victories along the way.
Exactly. Like if you finally master that TH sound,
Yeah.
that's a big win.
It's a reason to celebrate.
Yeah.
Like pop the champagne.
Exactly.
But you're right, it is a journey.
It's a journey. Yeah.
And it's not going to happen overnight.
It takes time and dedication.
It takes time and dedication.
You're right.
So it's like a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, exactly. A marathon.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
A marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah. And remember, even native speakers make mistakes.
Oh, that's true.
Language is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So it's a learning process for everybody.
One thing that I really liked about the podcast was
How's that?
how much they emphasized actually using what you learn
Oh, yeah.
in real life situations.
Like putting it into practice.
Yeah, because it's one thing to, like, know the rules, but it's another thing to actually be able to use them
Exactly.
when you're talking to someone.
In real life, yeah.
In real life. And they were saying, like, just look for every opportunity
Every opportunity.
to speak English,
Yeah.
no matter how small.
Doesn't matter if you're ordering coffee or
Yeah.
asking for directions.
Yeah.
Just use the language.
It's funny because I used to be so scared of making mistakes
Oh, yeah, no.
that I would just avoid speaking altogether.
Yep.
But the podcast really encouraged people to, like, embrace the mistakes.
Mistakes are good.
They're good.
They're opportunities to learn.
They're opportunities to learn. So
Yeah.
it's like, don't be afraid to make mistakes.
So embrace them.
Embrace them.
Learn from them.
Learn from them and then keep going.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about confidence?
Confidence.
Because I feel like that's something that a lot of people struggle with
Definitely.
when you're learning a new language.
It's a big one.
Like sometimes you feel a bit hesitant or unsure of yourself.
Yeah, because you're not sure if you're saying things correctly.
Right.
Yeah.
And the podcast talked about how confidence comes from practice.
Practice and preparation.
And preparation and believing in yourself.
Yeah, and not being afraid to make those mistakes.
Yeah, and I think it's also about, like, stepping outside of your comfort zone.
Definitely.
Like pushing yourself to try new things.
Even if you're not sure if you're going to get it right.
Yeah, and, it's like anything else in life.
Yeah.
The more you practice,
The more confident you become.
the more confident you become.
Exactly.
And it's important to surround yourself with people who support you,
Yes, supportive people.
who encourage you
Yeah.
to keep going.
Create a positive environment.
Yeah, a positive environment.
Where you feel comfortable practicing.
This has been such a good deep dive so far.
I know, it's been really interesting.
We've really gotten into the nitty-gritty of, like,
Spoken English
spoken English.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how all these little things,
can make such a difference.
they make such a big difference.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to keep going
Me too.
because we're not done yet.
We have one more part to this deep dive
One more
where
part.
we'll kind of wrap everything up.
Ooh, a nice little bow on top.
Exactly.
All right, so stay tuned, everyone.
We'll be right back.
All right, so we're back.
Back for more.
And I feel like we've covered so much ground already,
Yeah.
talking about all these different ways to,
Improve our spoken English.
to sound more like a native speaker. Yeah.
And now I'm just curious to hear, like, what are some of your final thoughts?
You know what really stands out to me
What is it?
is how, like, dynamic spoken English is.
Oh, yeah.
It's not about, like, following all these strict rules.
It's not about being perfect.
No, it's about, like, expressing yourself naturally.
Yeah, and comfortably.
Right.
It's almost like learning to dance.
Oh, yeah, that's a good analogy.
Like you can learn the steps,
The basic steps.
but then you got to let go.
And just feel the music.
Feel the music and just move.
Right. And in English, the music is like the rhythm.
Okay.
The pauses, the intonation, the way the words flow together.
So all those little things that we've been talking about.
Exactly.
And that's where that active listening comes in.
Oh, yeah, that's so important.
Because when you're really paying attention to how native speakers are speaking,
You start to pick up on those things.
yeah, you start to notice those patterns.
And you don't even realize you're doing it.
It's like it just seeps into your brain.
It's like osmosis. Osmosis, I love that word.
Yeah.
And then over time, as you become more fluent and more confident,
It just becomes natural.
you don't even have to think about it anymore.
Right. It's like riding a bike.
Writing about, yeah, exactly.
You just do it.
So for all of our listeners out there
Yeah.
who are on this journey,
of learning English.
What is like one challenge?
One challenge.
That you would give them.
Pick one thing that we talked about today.
Okay.
And try to use it.
In a real conversation.
Yeah, like maybe it's a contraction.
Right.
Or an idiom.
All right.
Or just pay attention to your intonation.
So just one small thing.
One small thing.
But do it consistently.
Make it a habit.
Make it a habit.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to have fun with it.
Oh yeah, have fun.
Language is supposed to be fun.
It's not a chore.
Not a chore.
So to all of our language explorers out there,
Yes.
keep practicing, keep exploring,
And keep learning.
and most importantly, have fun.
Have fun.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.